Hello everyone, it's Josh Morgan here. Um, I know I haven't made a video in quite a while, and I do apologize for that, but things have been a little chaotic with college and whatnot. Um, to make amends for that though, I will be starting a read-along series for J.R.R. Tolkien's The Silmarillion. I will also be doing one for The Hobbit in the near future, as well as for the Unfinished Tales, the Children of Hurin. Hurin. I always have to get that correct because I've always heard people pronounce his name as Hurin and Turin. Uh, Hurin Turin doesn't sound right. And then finally, I will be doing a read along series for The Lord of the Rings. Now, I do want to say right now that it's going to be a little hectic because I'm still in college, obviously. So please be patient with me with the reading series as well as with the gaming stuff because I know I need to finish the Battle for Middle Earth 1 playlist for the Evil campaign, and then I need to start one for BMFE2 as well as for Rise of the Witch Kings. So just bear that in mind. But without further ado, let us begin with the Silmarillion. And for the record, if anyone here has any questions or comments regarding to the Silmarillion or anything related to Tolkien, leave them in the comments below, and I will get to them as I see them appear on the videos. So, yes. And also, one final thing before I continue. I know, I'm sorry. But I will occasionally stop to kind of give everyone an overview of what was just read. So, yeah. Anyways, I knew Lindley, the music of the Ainur. There was Eru, the one, who in Arda was called Iluvatar, and he made first the Ainur, the holy ones, that were the offspring of his thought, and they were with him before aught else was made. And he spoke to them, propounding to them themes of music, and they sang before him, and he was glad. But for a long while they sang only each alone, or but few together, while the rest hearkened, for each comprehended only that part of the mind of Iluvatar from which he came, and in the understanding of their brethren they grew but slowly. Yet ever as they listened they came to deeper understanding, and increased in unison and harmony. First thing that I will say right off the bat, this is a Catholic work, I will admit. Me being not Catholic, I kind of find it cool when an author incorporates aspects of their own faith within to a narrative, so that's pretty cool. Um Also, the Ainur, before the Valar and the Ainur, well, before the Maiar and the Valar came to Middle Earth, or Arda, they was all, from my understanding at least, someone please correct me if I'm wrong with this, but from my understanding, they was all male. However, later on, as we will find out, the Ainur can actually change their appearance and whatnot, and even shapeshift. So, yeah. Anyways, And it came to pass that Iluvatar called together all the Ainur, and declared to them a mighty theme, unfolding to them things greater and more wonderful than he had yet revealed. And the glory of its beginning and the splendor of its end amazed the Ainur, so that they bowed before Iluvatar and were silent. Then Iluvatar said to them, of the theme that I have declared to you, I will now that ye make in harmony together a great music. And since I have kindled you with the flame imperishable, ye shall show forth your powers in adorning this theme, each with his own thoughts and devices, if he will. But I will sit and hearken, and be glad that through you great beauty has been wakened into song. So, in this section, Iluvatar, who in the narrative of Middle Earth is like the Judeo Christian God, like big capital G, like he's like, okay, I'm gonna give you guys the power to sing into being the world and whatnot, essentially. Then the voices of the Ainur, like unto harps, and lutes, and pipes, and trumpets, and viols, and organs, and like unto the countless choirs singing with words, began to fashion the theme of Iluvatar to a great music, and a sound arose of endless interchanging melodies, woven in harmony that passed beyond hearing into into the depths. I cannot pronounce that word. I'm sorry. Depths. There we go. And into the heights, and the places of the dwelling of Iluvatar were filled to overflowing, and the music and the echo of the music went out into the void, and it was not void. Now, when there is a capital within the English language, for those of you who are watching who are not native English speakers, when there is a definitive, I'm trying to remember this correctly because it's been so long since I've been in yeah, it been in an English class. Gosh, my brain. If there is a proper noun like the void, great music, the one, it refers to a specific thing or a person or place. Carrying on. Never since have the Ainur made any music like to this music, though it has been said that a greater still shall be made before Iluvatar by the choirs of the Ainur and the children of Iluvatar after the end of days. Then the themes of Iluvatar shall be played aright, and take being in the moment of their utterance, for all shall be uh, yeah, for all shall then understand fully his intent in their part, and each shall know the comprehension of each, and Iluvatar shall give to their thoughts the secret fire, being well pleased. Now, for those of you who are wondering what the heck is the secret fire, I will point you in the direction of the movie version of Fellowship of the Ring when Gandalf is fighting the Balrog, and he's like, I'm a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor. The flame of Anor is the secret fire, which is the spirit of Iluvatar to create things. Think of it like the Holy Spirit within Christianity or the Spirit of God within one of the Judeo Christian religious traditions and whatnot. But now Iluvatar sat and hearkened, and for a great while it seemed good to him, for in the music there was no flaws. But as the theme progressed, it came into the heart of Melkor to interweave matters of his own imagining that were not in accord with the theme of Iluvatar. For he sought therein to increase the power and glory of the part assigned to himself. To Melkor, among the Ainur, had been given the greatest gifts of power and knowledge, and he had a share in all the gifts of his brethren. He had gone often alone into the void places, seeking the imperishable flame, the secret fire. For desire grew hot within him to bring into being things of his own, and it seemed to him that Iluvatar took no thought for the void, and he was impatient of its emptiness. Yet he found not the fire, for it was with Iluvatar. But being alone, he had begun to conceive thoughts of his own, unlike those of his brethren. Some of these thoughts he now wove into his music, and straightway discord arose about him, and many that sang nigh him grew despondent, and their thoughts was disturbed, and their music faltered. But some began to attune their music to his rather than to the thought which they had at first. Then the discord of Melkor spread ever wider, and the melodies which had been heard before foundered in a sea of turbulent sound. But Iluvatar sat and hearkened until it seemed that about his throne there was a raging storm, as of dark waters that made war one one upon another, in an endless wrath that would not be assuaged. Then Iluvatar arose, and the Ainur perceived that he smiled. And he lifted up his left hand, and a new theme began amid the storm, like and yet unlike to the former theme, and it gathered power and had new beauty. But the discord of Melkor arose in uproar and contended with it, and again there was a war of sound more violent than before, until many of the Ainur were dismayed and sang no longer, and Melkor had the mastery. Then again Iluvatar arose, and the Ainur perceived that his countenance was stern. And he lifted up his right hand, and behold, a third theme grew amid the confusion. And it was unlike the others, for it seemed at first soft and sweet, a mere rippling of gentle sounds of delicate melodies. But it could not be quenched, and it took to itself power and profundity. And it seemed at last that there was two musics progressing at one time before the seat of Iluvatar, and they were utterly at variance. The one was deep and wide and beautiful, but slow and blended with an immeasurable sorrow, from which its beauty chiefly came. The other had now achieved a unity of its own, but it was loud and vain, and endlessly repeated, and it had little harmony, but rather a clamorous unison of many trumpets braying upon a few notes. And it essayed to drown the other music by the violence of its voice, but it seemed that its most triumphant notes were taken from the by the other and woven into its own solemn pattern. In the midst of this strife, whereat the halls of Iluvatar shook and a tremor ran out into the silences, yet unmoved, Iluvatar arose a third time, and his face was terrible to behold. Then he raised up both his hands, and in one chord, deeper than the abyss, higher than the firmament, piercing as the light of the eye of Iluvatar. The music ceased. Then Iluvatar spoke, and he said, Mighty are the Ainur. Mighty are the Ainur, and mightiest among them is Melkor. But that ye may know, and all the Ainur, that I am Iluvatar. Those things that ye have sung, I will show them forth, that ye may see what ye have done. And thou, Melkor, shalt see that no theme may be played that hath not its uttermost source in me. Nor can any alter the music in my despite. For he that attempteth this shall prove but mine instrument in the devising of things more wonderful, which he himself hath not imagined. So basically, what happened here is that the Ainur are singing. Melkor is like, I want to do my own thing, just create some chaos here. So he starts singing his theme. Some of the Ainur are like, what's going on here? So they stop singing. Some of them are like, oh, I like this music. I'm going to sing with this guy. And 3 times this happens. First time Iluvatar stands up and is like, okay, guys, let's have another round of music. Second time, he's like, okay, guys, really get your act together. Third time, he's like, okay, no, we're ending this now. And then he's like, okay, look here, Melkor. You may be the mightiest of all of the Ainur here and whatnot, but y'all get your power from me. You can't change what's gonna happen in the world, so stop being a butthead, essentially. I'm trying to keep it pure and family friendly and all. Um, but anyways, then the Ainur were afraid, and they did not yet comprehend the words that were said to them. And Melkor was filled with shame, of which came secret anger. But Iluvatar arose in splendor, and he went forth from the fair regions that he had made for the Ainur, and the Ainur followed him. Now, I know some of you are going to be like, wait, isn't Melkor kind of like the Judeo Christian idea of the devil? Yes. Essentially, when Tolkien was writing the Silmarillion, the idea is that he based Melkor off of the devil, but he didn't really like illusions, so yeah. But it's the general consensus among Tolkien fans and scholars. But when they came, but when they were come into the void, Iluvatar said to them, "Behold your music." And he showed to them a vision, giving to them sight, where before was only hearing. And they saw a new world made visible before them, and it was globed amid the void, and it was sustained therein, but was not of it. And as they looked and wondered, this world began to unfold its history, and it seemed to them that it was lived and grew, that it lived and grew. And when the Ainur had gazed for a while and were silent, Iluvatar said again, "Behold your music. This is your minstrelsy, and each of you shall find contained herein, amid the design that I set before you, all those things which it may seem that he himself devised or added. And thou, Melkor, wilt discover all the secret thoughts of thy mind, and wilt perceive that they are but a part of the whole and tributary to its glory. and many other things Iluvatar spoke to the Ainur at that time, and because of their memory of his words and the knowledge that each has of the music that he himself made, the Ainur know much of what was and is to come, and few things are unseen by them. Yet some things there are that they cannot see, neither alone nor taking counsel together. For to none but himself has Iluvatar revealed all that he has in store, and in every age there come forth things that are new and have no foretelling, for they do not proceed from the past. And so it was that as this vision of the world was played before them, the Ainurs saw that it contained things which they had not thought, and they saw with amazement the coming of the children of Iluvatar, and the habitation that was prepared for them. And they perceived that they themselves, uh, in the labor of their music, had been busy with the preparation of this dwelling, and yet knew not that it had any purpose beyond its own beauty. Now, for those of you who have not read either the Silmarillion or anything related to Tolkien's works, when the term "children of Iluvatar" is brought up, it's used to refer to the Eldar, which are the elves, and humans, so i.e. us. Yes. Where was it? Okay. For the children of Iluvatar were conceived by him alone, and they came with the third theme, and were not in the theme which Iluvatar propounded at the beginning, and none of the Ainur had part in their making. Therefore, when they beheld them, the more did they love them, being things other than themselves, strange and free, wherein they saw the mind of Iluvatar reflected anew, and learned yet a little more of his wisdom, which otherwise had been hidden even from the Ainur. And just as I said, now the children of Iluvatar are elves and men, the firstborn and the followers. And amid all of the splendors of the world, its vast halls and spaces, and its wheeling fires, Iluvatar chose a place for their habitation in the deeps of time, and in the midst of the innumerable stars. And this habitation might seem a little thing to those who consider only the majesty of the Ainur, and not their terrible sharpness, as who would, as who should take the whole field of Arda for the foundations, for the foundation of a pillar, and so raise it until the cone of its summit was more bitter than a needle, or who consider only the immeasurable vastness of the world, which still the Ainur are shaping, and not a minute's precision, to which they shape all the things therein. But when the Ainur had beheld this habitation in a vision, and had seen the children of Iluvatar arise therein, then many of the most mighty among them bent all their thoughts and their desires towards that place. And of these Melkor was the chief, even as he was in the beginning of the great. And of these Melkor was the chief, even as he was in the beginning of the greatest of the Ainur who took part in the music. And he feigned, even to himself at first, that he desired to go thither and order all things for the good of the children of Iluvatar, controlling the turmoils of the heat and the cold that had come to pass through him. But he desired rather to subdue to his will both elves and men, envying the gifts of which with which Iluvatar promised to endow them, and he wished himself to have subjects and servants, and to be called Lord, and to be a master over other wills. So, in this moment, and I set this down over here because, oh my god, I had this like resting on my knees, right legs. Anyways, basically at this point, Iluvatar is like, okay, guys, you want to know what you made? Here, bam, I'm going to show you what you made and whatnot. And the Ainur are seeing the creation of the world that they sang into being with the power of Iluvatar being flowing through them and whatnot. Now, when Iluvatar shows them like the history of Arda and the children that are to come and whatnot, they're all like, "Oh, wow, the children! Let's like make this world beautiful and perfect for the children." Melkor's like, I like these guys. I'm gonna get on board with this, but in reality, he's like, I want to control everything. So, yeah. But the other Ainur looked upon this habitation set within the vast spaces of the world, which the elves call Arda, the earth, and their hearts rejoiced in light, and their eyes beholding many colors were filled with gladness. But because of the roaring of the sea, they felt a great unquiet. And they observed the winds and the air, and the matters of which Arda was made, of iron and stone and silver and gold and many substances. But of all these, water they most greatly praised. And it is said by the Eldar, that is the elves, that in water there lives yet the echo of the music of the Ainur more than any substance else that is in this earth. And many of the children of Iluvatar hearken still, unsated, to the voices of the sea, and yet know not for what they listen. Now to water had that Ainu whom the elves call Ulmo, not to be confused with Elmo. Let me restart. Now to water had that Ainu whom the elves call Ulmo turned his thought, and of all most deeply was he instructed by Iluvatar in music. But of the airs and winds Manwë had most pondered, who was the noblest of the Ainur. Of the fabric of earth had Aule thought, to whom Iluvatar had given skill and knowledge scarce less than Melkor. Put a pin on that. But the delight and pride of Aule is in the deed of making and in the thing made, and neither in possession nor in his own mastery. Wherefore he gives it and hoards not, and is free from care, passing ever on to some new work. Now that is an interesting point here, because when Iluvatar created the Ainur and whatnot, Aule and Melkor, the being of smithing and Melkor, basically have this like almost equal creative power, I guess you could say. However, unlike Melkor, Owl's like, okay, look, I'm gonna make something cool. I'm gonna share it with people. Then I'm gonna go do something else. Whereas Melkor's like, let me create. Gosh, dang it, let me create. Let me create. Ah. uh. Okay, let me see here. Ah. And Iluvatar spoke to Ulmo and said, "Seest thou not how here in this little realm in the deeps of time Melkor hath made war upon thy province? He hath bethought him of bitter cold immoderate, and yet hath not destroyed the beauty of thy fountains, nor of thy clear pools. Behold the snow, and the cunning work of frost. Melkor hath devised heats and fires without restraint, and hath not dried up thy desire, not utterly quelled the music of the sea, nor utterly quelled the music of the sea. Behold, rather, the height and glory of the clouds, and the ever changing mists, and listen to the fall of rain upon the earth. And in these clouds thou art drawn nearer to Manwë, thy friend, whom thou lovest." So, with the creation of snow, frost, and mists, because of Melkor's, bungling of the music and whatnot, Iluvatar's like, you know, Melkor may have done this, but he can't destroy your fountains, your creation of water and stuff. You'll do fine, Ulmo. But, be friends with Manwë over here, because he's gonna need it. And he will. Spoiler. For those of you who haven't read the Silmarillion. Spoiler alert ahead. Then Ulmo answered, "Truly, water is become now fairer than my heart imagined. Neither had my secret thought conceived the snowflake, nor in all my music was contained the feeling of the falling of the rain. I will seek Manwë, that he and I may make melodies forever to thy delight." And Manwë and Ulmo have from the beginning been allied, and in all things have served most faithfully to the purpose of Iluvatar. But even as Ulmo spoke, and while the Ainur were yet gazing upon this vision, it was taken away and hidden from their sight, and it seemed to them that in that moment they perceived a new thing, darkness, which they had not known before except in thoughts. But they had become enamored of the beauty of the vision and engrossed in the unfolding of the world which came there to being, and their minds were filled with it, for the history was incomplete and the circles of time not fully wrought when the vision was taken away. When the vision was taken away. And some have said that the vision ceased ere the fulfillment of the dominion of men and the fading of the firstborn. Wherefore, though the music is sorry. Wherefore, though the music is overall, the Valar have not seen as with sights the later ages or the ending of the world. Then there was unrest among the Ainur, but Iluvatar called to them and said, "I know the desire of your minds, that what ye have seen should verily be, not only in your thoughts, but even as ye yourselves are, and yet other. Therefore I say, Ea, these things be, and I will send forth into the void the flame imperishable, and it shall be at the heart of the world, and the world shall be. And those of you that will may go down into it. And suddenly the Ainur saw afar off a light, as it was a cloud with a living heart of flame. Sorry. Flame, flame, flame. And okay. And they knew that this was no vision only, but that Iluvatar had made a new thing. Ea, the world that is. So here we see Iluvatar like showing the Ainur the creation, like the vision and whatnot. They're like, oh hey, yeah, let's go see the world and whatnot. Melkor's over at the side that's like, yeah, yeah, that's a really cool thing, God. I want to like corrupt the world and whatnot, essentially. And Iluvatar, aka God, Big G, is like, okay, I know what you're wanting to do. I'm taking the vision away. Bam, world. Let it be so. Also, bam, sending out the creative juices into the world and whatnot. AKA sending out the Holy Spirit into the world. For those of you who are Christian and whatnot, that little, you know, reference was for you guys. I think the Holy Spirit is within Judaism. I'm not the most religious Jew, so please don't judge me. Anyways, um, where were we? Okay. Thus it came to pass that of the Ainur some abode still with Iluvatar beyond the confines of the world, but others, and among them many of the greatest sorry, but others, and among them many of the greatest and most fair, took the leave of Iluvatar, and them that and descended into it. But this condition Iluvatar made, or it is the necessity of their love, that their powers should thenceforth be contained and bounded in the world, to be within it forever until it is complete, so that they are its life and it is theirs. And therefore they are named the Valar, the powers of the world. So here we get a little bit of polytheism in a way, because within the Silmarillion, the Valar are essentially seen as like lesser gods. Like you have God Big G, aka Iluvatar in Arda. Then you have the um, the Valar, who are considered gods Little G, and then you have the Ainur, who are basically like the angels. So yeah. But when the Valar came into Ea, they were at first astounded and at a loss, for it was not for it was as if naught was yet made, which they had seen in vision, and all was but on point to begin and yet unshaped, and it was dark. For the great music had been but the growth and the flowery of thought in the timeless halls, and the vision only a foreshadowing. But now they had entered into the in that. But now they had entered in at the beginning of time, and the Valor perceived that the world had been but foreshadowed and foresung, and they must achieve it. So began their great labors in wastes unmeasured and unexplored, and in ages uncounted and forgotten, until the deep. Okay. until in the deeps of time and in the midst of the vast halls of Ea, there came to be that hour and that place where was made the habitation of the children of Iluvatar. And in this work, the chief part was taken by Manwë and Aule and Ulmo. So you have the leader of the Ainur, aka the leader of the Ainur and the Valar, Manwë. You have the Lord of Waters, Ulmo, and you have the Lord of Forging and whatnot, Aule. But Melkor too was there from the first, and he meddled in all that was done, turning it, if he might, to his own desires and purposes, and he kindled great fires. When therefore earth was yet young and full of flame, Melkor coveted it, and he said to the other Valar, "This shall be my own kingdom, and I name it unto myself." But Manwë was the brother of Melkor in the mind of Iluvatar, and he was the chief instrument of the second theme that Iluvatar had raised up against the discord of Melkor. And he called unto himself many spirits, both greater and lesser, and they came down into the fields of Arda, and aided Manwë, lest Melkor should hinder the fulfillment of their labor forever, and earth should wither ere it flowed. And Manwë said unto Melkor, "This kingdom thou shalt not take for thine own wrongfully, for many others have labored here, no less than thou." And there was strife between Melkor and the other Valar, and for that time Melkor withdrew and departed to other regions and did there what he would. But he did not put the desire of the kingdom of Arda from his heart. Let me reread that. But he did not put the desire of the kingdom of Arda from his heart. Now the Valar took to themselves shape and hue, and because they were drawn into the world by love of the children of Iluvatar, for whom they hoped, they took shape after that manner with which they had beheld in the vision of Iluvatar, save only in majesty and in splendor. Moreover, their shape comes of the knowledge of the visible world, rather than of the world itself, and they need it not, save only as we use raiment, and yet we may be naked and suffer no less of our being. Therefore the Valar may walk, if they will, unclad, and then even the Eldar cannot clearly perceive them, though they be present. But when they desire to clothe let me retry that. But when they desire to clothe themselves, the Valar take upon them forms some as of male and some as of female. For that difference of temper they had even from the beginning, and it is but bodied forth in the choice of each, not made by the choice, even as with us male and female may be shown by the raiment, but is not made thereby. But the shapes wherein the great ones array themselves are not at all times like the shapes of the kings and queens of the children of Iluvatar. For at times they may clothe themselves in their own thoughts, made visible in forms yeah. For at times they may clothe themselves in their own thoughts, made visible in forms of majesty and dread. So here we see that the Ainur that came from the timeless halls, which is essentially like heaven, they came down into Arda, and some of them are like, you know what? I want to identify as a dude, and then some of them are like, eh, I want to be a chick. So that's how the Ainur came into the whole gender thing. But before they came into Arda, they was basically like genderless, I guess. Yeah, they was genderless, so they didn't really have a gender or anything. So yeah, we're almost done here, guys. Just a little bit more. Um, and the Valar drew unto them many companions, some less, and some well nigh as great as themselves, and they labored together in the ordering of the world, and the curbing of its tumults. Then Melkor saw what was done, and that the Valar walked on earth as powers visible, or as powers visible, clad in the raiments of the world, and were lovely and glorious to see, and blissful, and that the earth was becoming as a garden for their delight, for its tumults were subdued. Now it's interesting that it says in the Silmarillion that the earth was like a garden, because for the Christians and Jewish people that are reading along with me or listening in, you will remember that when the earth was created according to the Torah, or as the Christians call it, the Old Testament, the earth was a garden, or there was a garden called Eden. And the Garden of Eden was where humanity started, according to Christianity and Judaism. Um, but, anyways, his envy grew then the greater within him, and he also took visible form. But because of his mood and the malice that burned in him, that form was dark and terrible. And he descended upon Arda in power and majesty greater than any other of the Valar, as a mountain that wades in the sea, and has its head above the clouds, and is clad in ice and crowned with smoke and fire. And the light of the eyes of Melkor was like a flame that withers with heat and pierces with a deadly cold. Thus began the first battle of the Valar with Melkor for the dominion of Arda. And of the tumults the elves know but little, for what has here been declared is come from the Valar themselves, with whom the Eldaliae, that's the elves, spoke in the land of Valinor, and by whom they were instructed. But little would the Valar ever tell of the wars before the coming of the elves. Yet it is told among the Eldar that the Valar endeavored ever, in despite of Melkor, to rule the earth and to prepare it for the coming of the firstborn. And they built lands, and Melkor destroyed them. Valleys they delved, and Melkor raised them up. Mountains they carved, and Melkor threw them down. Seas they hollowed, and Melkor spilled them. And naught might have peace or come to lasting growth, for as surely as the Valar began to labor, so would Melkor undo it or corrupt it. And yet their labor was not all in vain, and though nowhere and in no work was their will and purpose wholly fulfilled, and all things were in hue and shape other than the Valar had at first intended, slowly none the less the earth was fashioned and made firm. And thus was the habitation of the children of Ilúvatar established, at the last in the deeps of time and amidst the innumerable stars. So, for what has happened basically is the creation of Arda, Earth, and with what was going on at the very end of the chapter, it was basically this. Eru was like, okay, you have created music to create this vision of the world. Those of you who want to go, you can go. Those of you who want to stay, you can stay. But those of you who do go, you're going to basically be stuck in a form where you can't exactly use all of your power. You can only use some of it. So, you know, those that go are like, okay, cool, let's go. They get down there. Melkor's like, okay, it's my world now. And Manway's like, no, you sit the fuck down. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I had to throw one bomb in there, but that's essentially what Manway was like. He was like, okay, no, bro. You go over in the corner and you think what you about what you did because you're not helping at all. You're just screwing everything up. And basically, whenever the Valar like creates something, Melkor's like, I'm just mad. I'm just gonna spite you guys. So yeah, bam. It's like it a perfect analogy for this is like when you're trying to create something as a small kid, and then you have another kid like come along and be like, oh, that looks bad, and then like just destroys it. It's like, dude, the fuck you doing? Anyways, that is the end of the reading for tonight. I will talk to y'all later. But before I go, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Hit the bell notification to let you guys know when a new video is going to be coming up because I have a tablet now, so I'm going to be using this more often to record like vlogs and whatnot. And leave a comment in the comment section to like give your thoughts about the reading and whatnot and what you would like to see. And as always, I will see you all in the next video. Bye bye.